The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America.
From Radio Beacon to Radio Beacon.
I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
You're the real deal.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
This just in, the House Oversight Committee is launching an investigation into the White House and its handling of a plan to build nuclear power plants in Saudi Arabia, a plan proposed and backed by former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Flynn was fired over not divulging his overseas contacts, but this new report details that the White House continued to pursue the deal even after he was fired and even after red flags were raised. CNN's Kara Scannell is looking into all of this for us. She's joining me right now. Kara, what are you learning here?
That's right, Kate. So the House Oversight Committee released a 24-page interim staff report that details these plans that were pushed by Michael Flynn, the then National Security Advisor, to advance a plan to build nuclear power plants in Saudi Arabia. Now, the plan was devised and promoted by a company that was formed by former generals, including a subsidiary of that company that Michael Flynn had once advised for. So that's important because once this plan was being pushed by Michael Flynn within the White House, members of the National Security staff, according to the Democratic report, had raised multiple red flags about this, raising questions about conflicts of interest and whether the Atomic Energy Act, which requires congressional approval of any exportation of nuclear technologies, was being violated. The NSC staff had raised these concerns to ethic and legal advisors within the White House, within the National Security Council, and to others who also work there. In the words of one of these senior officials that they had spoke to, they had said that this was not a business plan, but a scheme for these generals to make some money. So there were concerns beyond just the staffers here about this plan and it being pursued within the White House. Now, despite these objections, the plan was still pushed by Flynn and other top NSC officials. Then, even after Michael Flynn was fired for lying to the vice president, the plan continued, and these advancements continued within the White House. Now, this report is limited to the first 3 months of the administration, so it really ends at the beginning of April. No plan of this nature has gone into effect yet. But this is why Cummings is saying that he wants to investigate this. He wants to see whether the U.S. was advancing the best interests of U.S. national security by pursuing this plan to export nuclear technologies, or was it doing this plan in order to line the pockets of those that were close to the White House?
Sweet Jesus.
Seriously, dude. This is what I told, I love being me. My job is to get what's in my head into yours. Hello, everybody. And so that's what we'll do today. This story about Michael Flynn, just never ceases to amaze. But didn't I tell you that this was what Michael Flynn was trying to do? Was he was trying to build nuclear reactors in Saudi Arabia. Now, this article today that actually amplifies this with the testimony of whistleblowers who were inside the Trump administration during this process, where Michael Flynn and a whole bunch of generals were trying to cash in, and because they were jealous of other people who had made money with books and other people who had left, the military, and Colin Powell, and why weren't we rich, and we should, and their little scheme was to build and transfer nuclear technology to the Saudis. The Russians would build it. And that's why sanctions on Russia were so important to freaky Michael Flynn. And so when Donald Trump sat there and told James Comey, he's a good man, can you let Flynn go? It wasn't about lying to the vice president about, meetings he had. It was about a scheme that was launched during the campaign he was texting about it at the inaugural, right? Remember that? Michael Flynn sitting there in the front row texting. Hey, here come the signs. They're going to come off. We're good to go. Business is going to be great and all this. Yeah. And then through the transition, through the inaugural, and then Michael Flynn was our national security advisor. Now, the problem with Michael Flynn transferring technology to the Saudis of the nuclear variety is cumbersome. There's numerous violations of the law, which, still we have a little bit. We still have a little law left. Not much. But we do have some laws. Just some that haven't been violated by this president yet. And, what they were, according to this this report, this is an NBC News report, but it's everywhere. You can use whatever you want, Okay, you can go, Wall Street Journal's got it, Post got it, the Times got, everybody's got this story. All right? All right. So it was 40 nuclear plants, 40 of them. This was big money that was on the line for various generals and Michael Flynn. The company was called IP3 Iron Bridge Group. They've been working on this from June 2016 through December 2016. At the same time, he was serving as Trump's national security advisor during the presidential campaign. During the same time, he was on the presidential transition team as the national security advisor. And then finally, in the White House, as the national security advisor. This was not just Flynn by himself. Oh, hell no. It was Tom Barrack. Tom Barrack, who's now under investigation for all that interesting money, $107 million that came into the inaugural committee, and Jared Kushner as well. Unfortunately for these guys, there were whistleblowers inside the administration at the senior level who came forward and were very, very concerned about legal violations and procedural violations with rushing through a transfer of nuclear capability to the Saudis, because here in these United States, if you're going to transfer any kind of nuclear technology, nuclear info, nuclear prowess, sensitive nuclear technology to any other country, then you have to go through the Atomic Energy Act. You have to go through the National Security Council. You have to run it past their legal. And it turns out that after Flynn left and we got H.R. McMaster canceled it. And that's why it hasn't happened. When H.R. McMaster came in, he said, this did not go through any vetting. Extreme vetting, everybody. This didn't go through any vetting. This is 40 plants. They're handing it to this king, Salman. This is why the first foreign visit that this president made was to the Saudis. There were billions and billions of dollars on the line. The head of NSC Legal, John Eisenberg, he instructed the National Security Council staff to cease all work on the plan. But Flynn and his assistant, a man named Mr. Harvey, sounds like something out of a League of Our Own. They could smell the money. They could count the money. They could smell the what are they, riads? What do they call the Saudi money? I don't know. I've never spent any of it. But they rials, I think it's called rials. And right? Yeah, they could smell the rials. How did I know that? It's just one of those weird things. You don't know how you know it, you just do. Yeah, but Mr. Harvey reportedly ignored all these warnings, and he insisted that the decision to transfer the nuclear technology had already been made, that the president had made it, that Michael Flynn had made it, that it was done, that Jared Kushner had made this decision, and the political staff and the career staff inside the White House, they all agreed that this could violate the law. Now, you think about this. Okay, this is before Comey is fired. This is before Michael Flynn is fired. Okay, now add this to the fact that, the FBI, the Department of Justice, they're all sitting there and they're going, wait a minute, this president is a little strange. This is all so weird, and they had already opened a counterintelligence investigation into this president because of the way that he was talking about taking help from Russia and asking Russia for help, and all these weird things were going on, right? And then they had whistleblowers that were apparently talking to the National Security Council's ethics lawyer. And they determined that Michael Flynn was violating criminal conflict of interest statutes at the very least. And so this John Eisenberg guy at the National Security Council, the legal advisor, told them, stop this plan. This plan isn't. But Mr. Harvey continued to pursue the matter even after Flynn had been fired. So now Flynn's gone, but they still pursued it. And Flynn lies to the FBI about it. And Harvey says, Flynn was fired in February 2017. This is now March. This is March 2nd, 2017. And Mr. Harvey was asked about this, and Michael Flynn's deal. And he said, quote, I speak with Michael Flynn every night. This is according to the Congressional Oversight Committee's report, Elijah Cummings' report. And in mid-March of 2017, the Deputy National Secretary, Security Advisor, K.T. McFarland, remember her? Bye-bye. Yeah. She stated during a meeting that Donald Trump had told Tom Barrack that he could now lead the implementation of the plan to sell Saudi nuclear technology. Rick Gates was also involved in this. Mr. Harvey called Tom Barrack and Rick Gates on a conference call. Now, you remember Rick Gates is the deputy campaign manager and the deputy chairman of the inaugural committee, and Barrack is the chairman of the inaugural committee. And now they're in the White House, and Flynn's been fired, but they see all this money on the table, and they don't want anything to get in the way. Kushner doesn't. Rick Gates doesn't. Flynn is still on the sidelines, yes, but he still wants this money. He still wants this deal. These generals at IP3, they still want this deal. They still want this money. So Barrack hires Rick Gates. And they say, we'll do it. We'll make the deal. And when H.R. McMaster finally came in to replace Flynn, he ordered the National Security Council to stop all work on the matter. He fired Mr. Harvey. And where did Mr. Harvey end up working? Where did he go? He went to work on the House Intelligence Committee to cover it all up. I mean, Flynn wasn't just fired because, he lied to Vice President Pence, which was Sean Spicer's official, statement. Oh, no. Oh, hell no. He lied because he took many trips to Saudi Arabia, and he told the investigators that he stayed at the King Khalid International Hotel. Has anybody in this audience ever stayed at the King Khalid? You ever stayed at the King Khalid? I hear they have a fabulous brunch. No, they don't. Know why? There's no hotel called the King Khalid International Hotel. No hotel like that exists. And, by the way, the GOP senators, they all knew.
All things Randi at RandiRhodes.com.
Go for launch.
Speaking truth to power, the Randi Rhodes Show.
And then there's this.
Breaking news here. Here's the update just in the last couple of minutes. The New York Times has been reporting that President Trump spoke with his acting Attorney General Matt Whitaker about this idea of getting the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York to unrecuse himself from the Michael Cohen investigation. So now we've gotten reaction from the DOJ, and this is what they're saying, quoting them. Under oath to the House Judiciary Committee, then acting Attorney General Whitaker stated that at no time has the White House asked for, nor have I provided any promises or commitments concerning the special counsel's investigation or any other investigation. Mr. Whitaker stands by his testimony. So we have that from the Department of Justice. Briefly, Gloria, do you want to just respond?
They're just saying that he wasn't pressured. He said he wasn't pressured into doing anything, and he didn't. He apparently didn't do anything because Mr. Berman is not in charge of this investigation. Right. And I think what you're going to have now is the committee Democrats really combing through this testimony just to see if he did perjure himself.
Okay. So what you have here is an example of Whitaker, who had said that he had never discussed the SDNY investigation or done anything or taken any action to stop the SDNY or obstruct the SDNY federal investigation into Michael Cohen. You now have that, exploded all over the New York Times. This particular article is 17 pages long. That is what you call an ambitious report. This report lays out almost the entire case of obstruction of justice that Donald Trump and his Justice Department, especially under Whitaker, have undertaken. The entire obstruction effort, not only to denigrate the witnesses, to call the witnesses rats, to threaten the witnesses, to tamper with the witnesses, but also to tamper with the prosecutors. The reason, I don't know why the TV people can't figure out that Mr. Whitaker asked the Trump-appointed prosecutor at SDNY, Mr. Berman, Jeffrey S. Berman, who recused himself after Trump appointed him, after Trump nominated him, and he was confirmed as the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District. The reason why Mr. Berman is not in charge of SDNY's prosecution against Michael Cohen or anybody else that comes across Manafort or any of the other characters that have been, pursued and pled guilty to charges brought by the Southern District is because Mr. Jeffrey Berman won't unrecuse himself. And so that does not mean that Whitaker didn't approach him, doesn't mean Whitaker didn't try, doesn't mean Whitaker didn't ask him to. It just means that he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't unrecuse himself. However, what this report in the New York Times shows is that the federal prosecutors at SDNY in Manhattan as they were looking into the hush payments. And this is why these stories were important. Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal and the AMI and David Pecker and all this stuff, as they were looking into Trump's role in silencing these women. During the 2016 campaign, Trump called Matthew Whitaker. He called him, and when he was the newly installed Attorney General, with a question. And he asked whether his appointee, his confirmed U.S. Attorney for the Southern District, Jeffrey Berman, a Trump ally, could unrecuse himself. And couldn't he be put in charge of the Michael Cohen investigation? This is according to several American officials with direct knowledge of this phone call. Whitaker had privately told associates at the White House that part of his role at Justice now as the acting Attorney General, this guy who bilked veterans out of their life savings, but with running a bogus patent company where you had this great idea and you borrow money and you pay him and he'll promote it for you. He'll get you your millions. Sick, right? And veterans were saying that he had ripped them off for their entire life savings. That is Matthew Whitaker. That is who he is. So Whitaker privately told associates in the Justice Department that the reason why Trump picked him was, quote, to jump on a grenade for the president. Now, he knew that he could not put Mr. Berman in charge because Mr. Berman had already recused himself and was unwilling to unrecuse himself, apparently. The part about not willing to be unrecused isn't in this article, but that's the reason why it didn't happen. Berman had recused himself already. That's when Donald Trump got very sour on Matt Whitaker's ability to be his hitman, to push a button for him, to get the rats, the whole family of rats. And that's why we now have an Attorney General William Barr, because he thinks William Barr will be able to get people to unrecuse himself or kill investigations, or at least kill the results of the investigation so we may never see them. That's why he soured on Whitaker. Everybody's like, well, he appointed Whitaker. Why isn't Whitaker staying? Why isn't Whitaker? Whitaker isn't staying because Donald Trump soured on Matt Whitaker after Matt Whitaker was unable to convince Jeffrey S. Berman, our new United States attorney appointed and confirmed by the GOP in New York, in Manhattan, to unrecuse himself. Now, here's what we have Whitaker saying under oath, and this is going to devastate him. Here's his opening statement.
At no time has the White House asked for, nor have I provided, any promises or commitments concerning the special counsel's investigation or any other investigation. Since becoming acting Attorney General, I have run the Department of Justice with fidelity to the law and to the Constitution.
Okay, so that's an interestingly parsed statement. He didn't promise or commit. Didn't say I wouldn't ask. I didn't promise or commit that I could get Berman to unrecuse himself, but I'm not saying I didn't ask him. Now, the questions that were asked of him, some of them had to do specifically with Bob Mueller. Like Zoe Lofgren, she questioned him, but she asked specifically about his time as a private citizen prior to him becoming the acting Attorney General. So I'm not going to play that because it's not on point. It's not relevant to this conversation. This conversation has to do with the Southern District of New York, not Mueller, okay? And this conversation has to do with not promises or commitments, but whether or not he asked or spoke to anybody at SDNY. Well, you know, the inimitable, indomitable Ted Lieu from California asked Whitaker if he ever communicated with SDNY at all.
Earlier today, you had testified that you did not communicate to Donald Trump or senior White House advisors about the special counsel's investigation. So I'm going to ask you a related question. Did you communicate to Donald Trump or any senior White House advisors about investigations from the Southern District of New York concerning the Trump Organization, the Trump Inaugural Committee, Michael Cohen, or other investigations that relate to Trump entities or potentially the president?
Damn.
Congressman, I mentioned that. I said other investigations in my opening statement. I really don't have anything further to add to that answer.
And when you said other investigations, you mean you communicated to the president about other investigations?
No, I didn't. That's not what I said in my opening statement. I'll refer you back to my opening statement. I was very clear.
Did you communicate to the president, any senior White House advisors about investigations from the Southern District of New York related to Trump entities?
Again, I was very explicit in my opening statement.
No, you weren't.
As to that, not only about my communications regarding the special counsel's office, and I said other investigations, and the Southern District of New York would be included in other investigations.
No, what you said in your opening was you hadn't committed or promised. You never said you didn't communicate. And if you're referring Ted Lieu to your opening statement, I think Ted Lieu understood that he needed to look at it, because I did too. And this is what you said concerning other investigations. You didn't commit or promise any result.
At no time has the White House asked for, nor have I provided, any promises or commitments concerning the special counsel's investigation or any other investigation.
They didn't ask for, nor did I give a promise or commitment. So what did they ask for? Your best efforts. What did they ask for? The old college try. What did they ask for? Call this guy and see if he'll unrecuse himself. See, Ted Lieu asked a different question. Did you communicate? He doesn't want to answer that question. So he refers you to the opening statement, which now the Oversight Committee has reviewed. And clearly, he did not say he didn't communicate. He said he didn't commit, nor did he promise, nor did they ask him to commit or promise a result. But that came up to the point of a promise or commitment means it was discussed. These people are too cute by half. Here's Representative Val Deming. She's a Democrat from Florida, asking if you talked to SDNY.
I want to know whether you talked to President Trump at all about the Southern District of New York's case involving Michael Cohen.
Good for you.
Congresswoman, as I've mentioned several times today, I am not going to discuss my private conversations with the President of the United States.
So yes or no, did you?
No matter what the question is.
Yes or no, did you discuss with the President Trump anything about Michael Cohen?
Congresswoman, as I have expressed several times today, I am not.
Did you ever have any conversations with the president about firing or reassigning any personnel, U.S. attorneys or others who work with the Southern District of New York?
They knew.
With the president or anybody at all? Did you ever have any conversations with anybody about reassigning or firing any personnel, including U.S. attorneys with the Southern District of New York?
Congresswoman, I sit on top of the Department of Justice, as you mentioned.
Did you ever have any conversations about anybody who works with the District of Virginia firing or reassigning? with anybody, not just the president, anybody at all.
Congresswoman, I am not going to talk.
Okay, so let's talk about the great 115,000 men and women who work for the Department of Justice.
It's all privileged information. Okay, so you're not going to answer what you said to the president. So how about anybody else? I'm not going to answer you. How about anybody? Anybody? Did you discuss with anybody? They knew. They knew, and they asked him, and he fumfered and stammered and stuttered and, again, all the positions in the Kama Sutra assumed, twisting himself into a... Now they want to look at him for perjury, and probably not just on this particular subject, because that hearing, he was such a snarky, smarmy little bastard, okay? He was like a teenager. He was like one of those, you could ask him a direct question. He could be standing there with his hand in the cookie jar and you say, did you ever put your hand in a cookie jar? No, I'm not going to comment on whether or not I put my hand in a cookie jar. It's privileged information. And while his hand is in the cookie jar, that's the quality of person he is. And the reason why he's not there isn't because he's not a quality person. Oh, hell no. The reason why he's not there anymore is because Trump soured on him because he was not effective in browbeating Mr. Berman into unrecusing himself. And that is what this New York Times story today is all about. It's like the most amazing story about how the extent of the obstruction was not just with Whitaker. My God, it was sustained. It was secretive. It was massive. And it was done with intent, criminal intent. And fake and dis and misinformation. And the GOP was briefed on all of this, as well as Flynn trying to transfer. Yeah, what's really interesting? Uranium One. Hillary, uranium. But Hillary. Yeah, well, that went through the process, okay? That went through all of the 9 different agencies that it needed to go through. Hillary Clinton's signature on the Uranium One deal to sell a Canadian company's uranium mines located here in the United States to Russia went through all the proper channels, and it was pre-2016 election meddling, and it was signed off by 9 separate people in 9 different parts of the government. It went through the process. You may agree with it, you may disagree with it, whatever. That's a separate issue. The issue here is Michael Flynn and Donald Trump said, screw that process. We're going to make some money. And we're not going to go through the National Security Council. And we're not going to get the Secretary of State to sign off on, although they did bring Rex Tillerson on their first foreign trip. The American president went on his first foreign trip. Where did Trump go? What did he pick as his first foreign trip? Russia? Nah, they came to us. And they got private FaceTime in the Oval with Donald Trump, who said, I fired that nutbag Comey. Remember that? No, he didn't go to Russia. Did he go to NATO? Did he go to Belgium? Did he go to Germany? Did he go to the Brits with Brexit and all the contretemps in Europe? Did he do anything to shore up NATO? No, he went to Saudi freaking Arabia and did the sword dance. And Rex Tillerson, who had to sign off on this deal as Secretary of State, as one of the 9 signatures, they took him on this trip. And they did the sword dance. It was very strange. It was a strange freaking pick. What a seriously bizarre choice. Here, remember this? This was really bad.
That's beautiful. That is so beautiful. Heavy.
This is the war dance.
I can see that.
There's Rex Tillerson. There's, what's his face? Wilbur Ross, our Commerce Secretary. They all have to sign off on this. Look, Wilbur, like, desperately biting and trying to get into it. Find the beat, Wilbur. Find it. Find the beat. There you go, Rex. That was his first foreign trip. Why? Because there was all this money, and they were going to make all this money and not go through any of the proper legal steps. I'm still trying to figure out who wrote the I Am Part of the Resistance article in the New York Times, the anonymous op-ed. And we know it wasn't McCabe because McCabe was already gone when that thing was published. I already checked on that a couple days ago. So I know it's not McCabe. I'm starting to think it was H.R. McMaster. Because H.R. McMaster is the only person that stepped up and said, no, we're not transferring 40 nuclear reactors to the Saudis. Not doing it, okay? Violates the Atomic Energy Act. NSC Legal won't sign off on it. Michael Flynn is not going to make money off of this. This is a liar. This is a man who would sold out his country. He's a traitor, whatever. And then all of this obstruction began.
Connect. To speak to Randi, call 561-270-3844.
561-270-3844. Did you ask Acting Attorney General Matthew Whitaker to change the leadership of the investigation into your former personal attorney, Michael Cohen?
No, not at all. I don't know who gave you that. That's more fake news.
Oh my God!
There's a lot of fake news out there. No, I didn't.
What is the current status of your relationship with Mr. Whitaker?
Very good. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Whitaker. I think he's done a great job. He's a very, very straight shooter. I watched him during the hearing, some of it. I thought he was exceptional. He's a very fine man, and he should be given a lot of thanks by our nation. Okay, thank you very much.
This is really sad. This is sad when, a 17-page report with 5 reporters on it comes out that clearly shows that February 14th, 2017, they were all in the Oval Office with Trump, and they were trying to figure out what to say about the resignation of Michael Flynn. This was prior to Michael Cohen. The previous night, Flynn was under investigation by the FBI. Remember, Sally Yates went to the White House and said Flynn is blackmailable. She told Don McGahn they didn't fire Flynn. He stays there as our national security advisor, trying to hang on. Trump lets him for 2 weeks, for 2 freaking weeks. He asks Comey, can you let Flynn go? Can you let Flynn go? He says he's a good man. Comey says he is a good man, but won't commit or promise or do anything. And then in May, Comey is fired. And then this whole investigation explodes. Mueller starts offloading some of the crimes that he sees that aren't relevant to the Russia interference. He comes across foreign money being put into the campaign. He comes across campaign payments that are made to Stormy Daniels and to Karen McDougal, and he offloads these to SDNY. Trump decides the best thing he can do is change prosecutors and appoint somebody at SDNY, fires Preet Bharara. He appoints his own loyal soldier, who then recuses himself also because he's not going to break the law. Just like Sessions wasn't going to break the law for him. And then he hires Whitaker and says to Whitaker, see if you could get this guy to unrecuse himself. And now today it's coming full circle. And there, he has tried to obstruct this. He has tried to lie to us about it. He has had criminal intent all along. And remember, Mueller has been prohibited from asking Donald Trump or getting any questions answered with regard to obstruction. Donald Trump hasn't answered one question with regard to obstruction. Now, after they fired Flynn in this report, Trump says over lunch that day, and this is in Chris Christie's book, he says to Chris Christie, according to Chris Christie's book, this Russia thing is all over now because I fired Flynn. And Christie says he was taken aback, and he said, this Russia thing is far from over. What do you mean? Flynn met with the Russians. That was the problem. I hired Flynn. I fired Flynn. It's over, Trump says. And Kushner is at this lunch meeting, and he goes, that's right. Firing Flynn ends this whole Russia thing. As they were sitting having lunch, turns out that the White House counsel's office, Don McGahn, was meeting with Sean Spicer and trying to figure out what he's going to say about Flynn's firing. And when the Spicer briefing began, the lawyers started hearing lies coming out of Spicer's mouth. They started hearing a lot of misstatements because Spicer said that the reason why Flynn was fired was because he lied to Mike Pence. And he had also claimed that Flynn had been exhaustively investigated and vetted and blah, blah, blah. He told, he just lied. And the lawyers, they started adding up all the lies, and they compiled all the lies that Spicer told, and they put it into a memo. Later, when Spicer was interviewed, he told the lawyers that these were the talking points he was given by Don McGahn, and that they were concerned with how he would describe the firing of Michael Flynn. Later that same day, Trump confronts Comey in the Oval Office and tells him that Spicer had done a great job explaining how the White House handled the Flynn firing. And that's when he asked Comey to stop the FBI's investigation into Flynn and said Flynn was a good guy. And according to the memo that Comey wrote that day, at the time, he agreed with President Trump that Flynn was indeed a good guy, but he said nothing about ending the FBI investigation. And then by March, Jeff Sessions recused himself because investigators were looking into the campaign, and obviously Sessions had met with Russians and worked on the campaign. So finally, that's March. In May 9th, Trump fires Comey. And they give a conflicting account of why they fired Comey. He tells people that he fired Comey because the FBI was out of control. He wasn't doing a good job. The FBI agents hated him, blah, blah, blah. But then he sits down with Lester Holt and he says, I fired Comey over this Russia thing. And after that, that's when McCabe opens up goes to Rod Rosenstein, and they start talking about the 25th Amendment. They start talking about whether or not this president is a Russian agent, whether or not he's been cultivated, and so this morning, McCabe has a book, and so it's called Threat, and he's making the rounds. Tonight it'll be on Lawrence O'Donnell. I suggest you watch at least some of these McCabe interviews, okay? This morning he said, he was asked by Savannah Guthrie whether or not he was the one that opened the counterintelligence investigation. And he said, yes, I did. And here's why.
Did you order a counterintelligence investigation into the president?
I did.
Is that tantamount to saying you felt there was reason to suspect that he was a national security threat? Is that what that means?
It is saying that we had information that led us to believe that there might be a threat to national security. In this case, that the president himself might, in fact, be a threat to the United States national security.
And in particular, was it your suspicion and the reason that you opened this investigation that you thought the president might actually be working on behalf of Russia?
We had a number of very concerning things that we were considering at the time. One of them was the fact that the president, in our view, had gone to extreme measures to potentially negatively impact, possibly turn off our investigation of Russian meddling into the election and Russian coordination with his campaign.
So that goes to his potential motive, but when you're opening this particular kind of investigation, a counterintelligence, Did you suspect the president might actually be working for Russia?
We thought that might be possible. Yes, we thought it might be possible. Now remember, Savannah, we're at the beginning of an investigation. We don't draw conclusions. We simply look at the facts and the information we have and begin investigations that we think are appropriate.
But as you point out in your book, the FBI does not start any investigation willy-nilly. What were the predicate facts? Lay them out here. What were the facts that suggested the president may be a national security threat and may, in fact, be working on behalf of a foreign adversary, Russia?
Okay, so Savannah, we have to go back to the investigation of potential collusion between the campaign and Russia, right? So through the fall, these are topics we've been looking at. During that time, the president has been publicly undermining the investigative efforts. He's talking about it as a witch hunt. He's talking about it as a hoax. So it's clear to us that he's not happy with what we're doing. Also, during that time, the president approaches the director of the FBI and asks him to stop investigating Michael Flynn. A part of our investigation into Russian interference, he asks him to turn off that investigation.
Why isn't that just the normal obstruction of justice criminal inquiry, which is substantial enough on its own? But what takes it to this next level where there's a suspicion that he's working for a foreign government? I mean, this is extraordinary.
Because you have to ask yourself, Savannah, if you believe that the president might have obstructed justice for the purpose of ending our investigation into Russia, you have to ask yourself why. Why would any president of the United States not want the FBI to get to the bottom of Russian interference in our election?
So here's the thing, okay? Donald Trump is not surprised when he's told that Russia meddled in our election, nor is he concerned when he's told that Russia meddled in our election. He just wants the investigation turned off. And obviously, this thing with Flynn starts this whole counterintelligence investigation. And what is this thing with Flynn? This thing with Flynn is Flynn wants sanctions taken off of Russia, so Russia can put up all this money to build these 40 nuclear power plants in Saudi Arabia. Kushner wants that to happen so he can borrow money from Saudi Arabia for 666 Fifth Avenue. Trump wants to do whatever Russia wants him to do because Russia has, plans for a Trump Tower that Putin needs to sign off on, that Michael Cohen is working on. And Manafort wants to do what Russia wants him to do because Manafort is deeply in debt to a Russian oligarch named Oleg Deripaska. Roger Stone is in trouble because when Russia offered to indeed help Donald Trump in exchange for Donald Trump helping Russia after he becomes president or during the campaign, he's working on, business deals. Manafort's working on making himself whole with Oleg Deripaska. Flynn is working on cashing out as a general. I mean, all these people have all this interest. And Jared needs money from the United Arab Emirates or Saudi Arabia. And in fact, Eric Prince, believe it or not, is the one, him and a guy named George Nader, are the ones that broker the back channel discussions between the United Arab Emirates, the Saudis, and the Russians in the Seychelles. And they all lie about it because they're all double dealing against the United States. They're all traitors to the United States. And then once this thing starts being investigated by Comey, and it was the Flynn thing, it all started when Sally Yates went to the White House and told Don McGahn that Michael Flynn was blackmailable by the Russians, that they had evidence that his phone calls were intercepted. Now, why? Because Russians who were talking to Flynn, of course, have their phones surveilled. Just like if you go to Russia and you're Donald Trump, or you go to Russia and you're Michael Flynn, your phone is going to be surveilled. Same thing with China. So, of course, they had these intercepted phone calls. And they were intercepted and they were stunned. Oh, my God, we have Russians talking on the phone. And you know who's on the other end? Michael freaking Flynn. Isn't he advising the Trump campaign? Yeah, and they just made him national security advisor. Holy crap. What is that about? We thought it was weird when Paul Manafort was, his campaign manager, but okay. He had some political experience. Then we thought it was weird when Jeff Sessions recused himself because he had had all these Russian meetings. Okay. And then finally, Sally Yates has to go to the White House right after the president's inaugurated. I mean, I think she was there on the 24th. She calls. On the 25th, she goes to the White House to talk to Don McGahn. On the 26th, Don McGahn asks for the transcripts. She gives them to him. And still they won't fire Michael Flynn. So Trump decides that he would ask James Comey to end the investigation on Michael Flynn. And when Comey won't do it, he's fired, and McCabe picks up where Comey left off. Except he opens a counterintelligence investigation. Because he now believes that the president, with criminal intent, is obstructing an investigation into Russia meddling. Remember, Comey opened an investigation because there was evidence from the intelligence community that Russia did hack, that Russia was responsible for the hacking of the DNC, that Russia had hacked into a bunch of voter registration, state voter registration sites. And also the GOP, they never talk about that, but that Russia had hacked into the Republican National Committee. All of this, that's what they knew had happened. But after he fired Comey, because Comey wouldn't play ball and adopt the president's position on Michael Flynn, and Comey was fired, McCabe knew that there was criminal intent there, that there was something really, really wrong with all these people around the president and the president himself. With Jared, with his son, with Flynn, with Manafort, with Sessions having to recuse himself. All of that had happened by May. And Comey's fired on the 9th, and the next day, McCabe goes and talks to Rod. He talks to Rod, and he tells Rod what Comey told him about, can you let Flynn go? And the very next day, Rod Rosenstein appoints Bob Mueller to be the special counsel. That is the correct timeline. That is the order of things. That is why the investigation isn't going to go away. It's not going to go away because Mueller started, and some of it is in New York, some's in Virginia.
Mary had a little man. The fault. We believe that all men are created equal.
To the magnificent mosaic that is America. From radio beacon to radio beacon. I have a dream today.
Change has come to America.
Believe me.
Knock, knock. Who's there?
It's a figment of your imagination.
Randi Rhodes Show.
Turn up your mind.
Real change never takes place from the top on down, but always from the bottom on up.
Bernie Sanders' healthcare for all idea is gaining steam.
Free tuition, free college tuition, free tuition champion, Senator Bernie Sanders.
Bernie Sanders added, the greatest threat to national security is climate change.
The future of our planet is at stake.
Sanders taking on Amazon.
Bernie Sanders has been consistent hammering about income inequality.
Nobody in America works 40 hours a week, should be living in poverty. So our economy is rigged. We have a campaign finance system which is corrupt.
Sanders leading the charge to stop war against Yemen.
The first time ever the Senate has voted to end an unauthorized war.
The fight against injustice has been the work of his life.
Jobs and education, not jails and incarceration.
We are not going to retreat on women's rights.
Sanders pushing a bold agenda that includes protecting DACA recipients and comprehensive immigration reform.
You don't rip little children away from the arms of their mother.
A major announcement from Amazon. Amazon will raise its minimum wage to $15 an hour. 350,000 workers. Thousands of workers at Disney World will get raises.
It's a victory for Bernie Sanders.
It's a victory for all workers. Brothers and sisters, we have a lot of work in front of us. If we are prepared to stand together, there is no end to what the great people of our nation can accomplish.
right, Bernie's in. Bernie's in, everybody. Bernie's in. Now, here's the thing. For all the crap that people hurl at Bernie, Bernie, as an independent, has changed the entire Democratic Party. He's changed the entire field that we, because yesterday was President's Day. And like I said, it was like being in, celebrating Valentine's Day when you're in a miserable relationship. But now every day after President's Day is who's going to be the next President's Day, right? And so Bernie announced this morning that he was going to give it another shot. He was going to throw in. They asked him this morning what the difference is between Bernie now and Bernie in 2016. And he said, this time we're going to win.
I am going to run for president. That's correct.
What's going to be different this time?
We're going to win. We are going to also launch what I think is unprecedented in modern American history, and that is a grassroots movement, John, to lay the groundwork for transforming the economic and political life of this country. The only way that real change takes place is when millions of people stand up, fight back, and say, enough is enough. We're going to have a government that works for all of us, not just the few. This campaign, John, is a continuation of what we did in 2016. Many of the ideas that I talked about, Medicare for all, raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, making public colleges and universities tuition free. All of those ideas, people will say, oh, Bernie, they're so radical, they are extreme. The American people just won't accept those ideas. Well, you know what's happened in over 3 years?
Yep.
All of those ideas and many more are now part of the political mainstream. Bottom line is, the average middle-class family will save money, will spend less money on health care, will have more choice, and have broader coverage than is currently the case. I think it is unacceptable and un-American, to be frank with you, that we have a president who is a pathological liar, and it gives me no pleasure to say that, but it's true. We have a president who is a racist, who is a sexist, who is a xenophobe, who is doing what no president in our lifetimes has come close to doing, and that is trying to divide us up.
Conservatism is a racket.
And we know that. And so it just comes down to who is the best positioned person to beat Donald Trump in 2020, obviously. We're going to face everything from, North Carolina. We found out, yes, it was rigged. There's a witness that testified to the state election board in North Carolina that about 2,000 ballots had been forged or thrown away, and that the absentee ballots, were collected, et cetera, right? So you have that. And the idea that we can't vote and all of the, just the voter suppression so we have our job cut out for us in 2020. And of course we know we have, like I said, an embarrassment of riches. But here's the thing about Bernie. I know people always say Bernie is a Democratic socialist. He is. And Bernie is not a Democrat. No, he's an independent. So how the hell does he run as a Democrat? He has changed the Democratic Party by not being part of it, okay? He has changed the Democrats back to what it was when Franklin Delano Roosevelt was the president of the United States. He's changed the Democratic Party back to its progressive roots. He's turned it away from this corporate DLC Uber, we have to kiss, corporate butt. We have to. No, he's changed it back to a progressive party. So you have to give him credit for that. You cannot take that away from him. He reshaped the entire party, even the way that the conventions will be run. You have to remember something, and I think a lot of people forget about this. Bernie literally won all 55 counties during the primaries in West Virginia. Does anybody remember any of this? I'm going to try and walk you down memory lane real quick. In West Virginia, Bernie and Hillary were both in a primary. And Bernie won every single one of the 55 counties in West Virginia. And yet, at the convention, West Virginia went for Hillary Clinton. Now, for those of you with a really good memory, this is exactly what I was talking about when I was making those jokes in a nightclub in San Francisco on a Saturday night on my own time. That's exactly the subject. It had to do with the superdelegates. It had to do with, flipping, and they're not really pledged, and you could do this, and you could do that, and it just infuriated me back then. And I was right, and I suffered. I lost my freaking job for that. Because limousine liberals freak me the hell out. They are bizarre people. And that's why I can't be one of them. But I was right. What happened in West Virginia was Hillary Clinton was able to work the superdelegates. And so at the nominating convention, all of West Virginia pledged for Hillary Clinton, even though Bernie had won all 55 counties. It was disgusting. It pissed off so many people, especially in West Virginia, because they were the most affected, decided they weren't going to vote. And of course, West Virginia was never going to be a Democratic stronghold. It was never going to go for either of them in the end. We're talking primary results, not general election results. But in the end, Donald Trump, of course, swept West Virginia. Why? Because Donald Trump went there and told them he was going to bring back coal mining jobs. And Hillary Clinton, to her credit, had the temerity to tell the people in West Virginia those jobs were never going to come back. And that is why West Virginia went strongly and quickly for Bernie. However, the Democratic Party always wets its own bed. And instead of letting those delegates go to Bernie, she had to pick them off. That's why people get pissed off at her. It's not that she does illegal things. It's not that she was one of 9 signatures on a Uranium One deal. It's that she does stuff like that, and it pisses off ordinary Americans. And so Bernie literally won those delegates. This year at the nominating convention, at the Democratic National Convention, it will not be that way. Bernie was successful in changing the rules that we use in order to assign who won and who didn't win a state. This year, when we go to the nominating convention, superdelegates have no say in the first vote. It's only if something is disputed and you have to have a second vote that the superdelegates would have a say. And so if this election were being held this year instead of last time in 2016, Bernie would have gotten hundreds of, I forget how many delegates he would have won in West Virginia. But it's important that you realize that the fix was in. It was rigged in that way. And we unrigged it. And the person that fought to get it unrigged was Bernie Sanders. He does the unsexy stuff, okay? The real grassroots stuff, the stuff that needs doing. The state legislators and the attorney generals and the state senators and, all these state offices that really do matter for, law and order and crime and justice and social justice and all these things. This is the man that does that really, really tough slog through the unsexy, not in the major media, not in the national media stuff. And he really does fight for that stuff, and he really does get change. So you could say whatever you want. You don't like Bernie. You don't think Bernie should do it again. Yes, Bernie is going to be the oldest. Right now we have the oldest president ever. Donald Trump is the oldest president we have ever had. But if he goes in 2020 and he'll outlive democracy because he will kill it himself. And so it matters. Now, I watched Amy Klobuchar last night. Did you see? Amy Klobuchar had a town hall meeting. CNN is doing a good job of, showing you each and every candidate as they announce. So they had, when Kamala announced, they had a town hall with Kamala. They had a town hall with Corey. They had a town hall with Amy last night, Amy Klobuchar. Amy Klobuchar is a pragmatist. Amy Klobuchar is less inclined to make big change She's incremental in her approach. You might like that. You might not like that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. What matters is that you start to learn who each and everybody is. I mean, we got so many amazing people who bring different skills. Elizabeth Warren, okay, they did a town hall with her. Bernie's going to probably have a town hall too, I would guess next week. I haven't seen it in the lineup yet, but I'm sure that they are scheduling it as we speak. But you have to give props where props are due. Bernie Sanders of Vermont, a little tiny state, a man who ran 7 times as an independent. 7 times. I think he ran 4 House races and 3 Senate races. And yes, he's 77 years old, but he has changed the platform of the Democratic Party. He has changed the willingness of the Democratic Party to embrace things like social justice, to embrace things like Medicare for all, to have to answer questions about whether or not you're for Medicare for all or you're for a public option. But you cannot be a Democrat anymore and not have a health care plan to cover all Americans. You can't. And you can't be a Democrat anymore and not have a plan for social justice. And you can't be a Democrat anymore and not have a plan for climate change. And you can't be a Democrat anymore and not have a plan to pay down the debt. And you can't be a Democrat anymore and not have a plan for immigration, a comprehensive plan for immigration. You can't be a Democrat anymore and not have a plan to close the gap of wealth inequality. Bernie pointed out today, I got to say, that the Walton family, the family that owns 51% of Walmart, Sam Walton's heirs, make more than anyone who works at Walmart does in a year in 1 minute. In 1 minute. They make $25,149 a minute, the Walton family does. That's incredible. You know what that is? That's $1.51 million an hour. And a cashier at Walmart makes $20,000. A sales associate makes $21,000. An entry-level worker makes $22,000. An average $24,000. The Walton family, $25,149 a minute. That's called income inequality. Why can't those workers get a raise? They can't get a raise because the Waltons keep it all in the family, keep it all to themselves. And why not? There's no estate tax. They can have all this money tax-free. While we're out here trying to figure out how to make a healthcare premium payment, out-of-pocket costs, co-pays on drugs and doctor visits.
The Randi Rhodes Show is live on RandiRhodes.com and the free Progressive Voices app for Android and iOS. Visit the App Store or ProgressiveVoices.com now.
I rise today to make it clear that treason is not a laughing matter. It is a serious crime embedded in the Constitution, punishable by death. But since your commander-in-chief chose to raise it at a political rally, let's have a discussion about treason. Is it treason for a presidential campaign to meet with a hostile foreign power to sell out our democracy and rig the election? Is it treason for a presidential campaign to meet with Russian spies who promised that was negative about a political opponent and then failed to report that meeting to law enforcement officials? Is it treason for your former national security advisor to be a Russian asset sitting at 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue doing the bidding of Vladimir Putin? How dare you lecture us about treason? This is not a dictatorship, it's a democracy, and we do not have to stand for a reality show host masquerading as President of the United States of America.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Hakeem Jeffries, everybody, having a blunt conversation on the House floor about the condition we find ourselves in. And, you know, Republicans obviously don't believe in democracy. They have abandoned every democratic principle. And one of the things that you can see, you know, has to do with the states. And this is the tough work that apparently nobody wants to do except for Bernie. And the states, obviously, when they lost control of their governorships, like in Wisconsin and Michigan, and the voters had their will counted, and it ended up with Democratic governors, Democratic attorney generals, Democratic state legislatures, the Republicans decided that while they were transitioning to the results of the last election, that these governors in Michigan, Ricky Snyder, and this governor, Scott Walker in Wisconsin, that they would rip the power away from the incoming governors to do anything on election reform, to do anything on cleanups, to do anything on, political money in their system, things like that. And so these Republicans, even on the state level where most people don't pay very much attention, they are subverting democracy. They are, they've always gerrymandered, and now they want to add a citizenship question to the census to suppress legal immigrants from participating, because they think that somehow with this crazy president, even if they're here and they're documented and eligible to vote, and they answer the census, that they they're naturalized, that ICE is going to come and get them, because look, ICE came after some military kids that were obviously fighting for their country in order to get citizen. I mean, it's just another voter suppression tactic. And in 2020, if you think that it was bad in 2016 and 2020 is going to be all solved, it's all going to be copacetic, everything's going to be great, you're out of your mind. It's going to be even worse. And so here's where we find ourselves. We find ourselves in a position where democracy, literally, small d democracy, the ability to vote, the ability to, get representation, because, districts are divided by the census. And if the census has a citizenship question on which, deteriorates the participation in the census, then districts and the number of people living in those districts will be off. And if that's off, then so will federal money be off. So will the drawing of the districts be off. So, a lot of things at this little tiny minute level that happens has this major freaking effect on everything having to do with our right to be counted, our right to vote, our right to be heard, our right to federal funding, all these things. And the only people that seem to understand this are people that Donald Trump has gone after with a vengeance. And the Russian bots have gone after with a vengeance. And so here's where, we've got all these candidates. It's very, very early. The first debate's already been scheduled. It's going to be in June. The first televised debate's going to be in June. And we have so many candidates that I suspect they'll have to divide it up into 2 nights. And it's great. And the reason why we have so many is because the party has changed. The way that people can announce for president. It's all different now. The party has been taught a lesson. And who taught them this lesson? The Independent. The Independent Bernie Sanders taught them a lesson. Tom Perez learned that lesson. And Tom Perez has changed the way that people can run in the Democratic Party. Tom Perez has changed the way that we nominate our nominee at the convention. So the superdelegates don't get to, because like I said, in West Virginia, all 55 counties voted for Bernie. Bernie didn't win West Virginia's delegates. He didn't, because of the superdelegates. And who are they? They're a bunch of unelected party people. That's just wrong. To reverse an entire state's vote by a couple of unelected, people who are just tight with the party. Either they're the governor or they're a member of the House or a state legislator. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. And so that's changed. And so here's the question we're going to have to ask ourselves, because now that democracy itself is under attack. And it's not just by Donald Trump. The whole Republican Party enables him. And they do it because when you have a dictator, when you have an autocrat, when you have an oligarch, the elites always go along with him because they don't want to be made an example of. That's why you have people who were anti-Donald Trump. They just resigned. They didn't run again. They didn't run again. They just wanted to take their money and go home as Republicans. So Jeff Flake, he's not running again, okay? Trey Gowdy, who I mean, 11,892,642 hearings on Benghazi, which produced absolutely nothing, but he couldn't defend Donald Trump. So he just said, you know what? I won't run again. Meanwhile, you got other people that lost their jobs in Congress. Joe Crowley, who AOC took his seat in New York, he just joined a lobby shop. The revolving door is alive and well. And then you have our candidates, and a lot of them, not all of them, but a lot of them understand that they cannot run for the Democratic nomination and take PAC money. They understand that they can't run for the Democratic nomination and not have a plan for campaign financing, which includes public financing. You can't run as a Democrat anymore without recognizing that democracy itself is under attack, and you have to be able to address it and speak to it and tell everybody how you're going to stop gerrymandering and show everybody that you're active in the states and that we need to take the state legislatures, and that's just as important if we want to have our votes counted, and that the Democratic National Committee has to change the way it nominates people, and it did. This is tough work. This is the kind of stuff that people just, check out. They don't want to hear about it, but this is the stuff that matters on Election Day. All the stuff that goes into Election Day matters on Election Day. And so we're going to have to pick, if you don't think that Bernie is the best Bernie, meaning you don't think he's the best messenger for his ideas because he's 77 years old and he's already been defeated one time in a presidential election, then you're going to have to figure out who the best Bernie is. You're going to have to figure out who is the person that has Bernie's ideas and can deliver Bernie's ideas to the American people better than Bernie, because anything else isn't going to fix what's wrong with this country. That's just a fact. That's just the lay of the land. That's just where we are. That is, if you see, you got people out here in this audience who don't believe in $15 minimum wage. So let me explain to you what the best Bernie will explain to you on the campaign trail. The reason why $15 has become a mantra, the reason why you can't run to be a Democratic candidate, you can't run to be a Democratic nominee for the presidency of the United States anymore without talking about a $15 minimum wage is because of Bernie. And here's why you have to have it. When I explain to you that the Waltons make $25,000 a minute or $1.51 million an hour, while the workers who work in Walmart, the best paid full-time worker in Walmart, makes less than that a year. The reason is because, and I hope you understand, that means that people who work for Walmart full-time need food stamps. They need housing vouchers. They need all kinds of help from the government. Because corporations used to offer these benefits. They used to give health care. They used to give a decent minimum wage. They used to promote people. They used to have wage increases at normal intervals. They used to reward productivity with better wages. They don't anymore because our government lets them do it. And what happens is those benefits that those workers who are working really hard need in order to eat, feed their children, pay for daycare, pay their rent, have a car, put gas in it. The corporations offloaded all their responsibility to do this to the government. And the government accepts it. The government says, okay, you don't have to give any health care benefits, or you don't have to give education benefits, or you don't have to pay a decent minimum wage. You can tell people that work 39 hours that they don't qualify for full-time benefits. You could do whatever game you want to play. You could do it. You can do it because we will supplement their income. And by we, I mean you. I mean you. So what you have out here are people who are anti-welfare and anti-$15 an hour. Those two things cannot survive together. Either you're going to have people that get benefits from the government in order that they're not on the street, in order that their children aren't, walking around with, chicken pox and the measles and can't pay for a doctor out of your pocket, or you're going to force companies to own their own responsibilities to their own workers. But you can't have no welfare, and you can't have no Section 8 housing, and you can't have, a minimum wage that's $10 an hour or $9 an hour. And here's the dirty little secret about Walmart. Not only do we pick up their slack by giving these benefits to their workers, but then the shoppers are spending their EBT money there.
This is the Randi Rhodes Show. To speak with Randi, dial 561-270-3844. That's 561-270-3844.
I know you and other members of your team briefed the so-called Gang of Eight. These are the leaders of Congress in the days after Comey was fired about the Russia investigation. So it would have been the majority leader of the Senate, Mitch McConnell, Speaker of the House, Paul Ryan, and Democratic counterparts. Did you tell them that you had opened a counterintelligence investigation into President Trump?
The purpose of the briefing was to let our congressional leadership know exactly what we'd been doing. Opening a case of this nature, not something that an FBI director, not something that an acting FBI director would do by yourself, right? This was a recommendation that came to me from my team. I reviewed it with our lawyers. I discussed it at length with the Deputy Attorney General, and I told Congress what we had done.
Did anyone object?
That's the important part here, Savannah. No one objected. Not on legal grounds, not on constitutional grounds, and not based on the facts.
Oh! So that means that Republicans and Democrats both know that the president is undoing our democracy. And the GOP is going along with it. It's very sick and it's very sad. So what this tells you is that the strategy of the Republicans is thievery. The strategy of the Republicans is democracy is too messy. It's got too many checks and balances. It's got too many rules. It's got too many laws. You can't launder money. You can't, this, you can't. And they just don't have the patience for it anymore. They want to just get the most idiotic person in there who can hold a pen, sign off on everything that they want done, and, then sell it to the American people by saying, I care about the forgotten man. I care about you. But he doesn't care about you. He cares about the elite, and the elite are the people that are backing him. And that is the stuff that, banana republics are made of. So it matters. It matters that we can vote. It matters that we talk about fixing the system so that we can vote. North Carolina, my God, that story today, that should have set people's hair on fire. That an entire state was rigged for a guy who won the election by 905 votes, and that the number of absentee ballots that were either forged or tossed was over 2,000. Georgia. The Secretary of State was in charge of an election when he was on the ballot and didn't recuse himself. These are the Republicans, my friends. This is what they have in mind for us. They think that we are the unwashed masses and that we should be so poor, that we should be so preoccupied with paying, for food that we don't have time to talk about, reform and changes that we desperately need. While the state legislatures take away power from any Democrat that happens to prevail in an election. During the lame duck period. I always say the lame ducks are the scariest ones. They introduce bills to take away the power of the governor to, increase the minimum wage or to clean up the polluted river or the freaking radon in the building. You know what I mean? It's just like so amazing. Doug in Denver.
Hi, Randy.
Oh, wow, you're loud. You're loud.
Oh,
it's not your fault.
Anyway,
yeah.
I'm a Bernie supporter. I gave him money last time. I went to one of his rallies, and it really bothered me that he didn't vote on the Oleg Deripaska.
Oleg Deripaska?
Yeah,
Deripaska.
He didn't vote, and they're saying it was because he missed it because he was working on his sexual harassment thing or whatever.
Yeah, he had a campaign staffer who was accused of sexual harassment in the 16 campaign, and he was at a meeting with the woman who had accused one of his campaign staffers of, molesting her. But it doesn't matter because, when a vote is taken, the votes have already been counted and it would have failed anyway. Bernie's vote wouldn't have changed the result.
Okay, but he voted against the Magnitsky Act, too. And, I don't know. I'm worried it doesn't look good.
Well, listen, nobody is going to be a perfect person, but it's just so unique that the Democrats will pick apart every single person who tries to save us from Donald Trump and the assault on our democracy, on the complete and utter assault by corporate interests over us and the quality of our lives. That, they'll say, oh, well, this one did that and this one was a prosecutor and I can never vote for a prosecutor. And that one over there didn't vote for Oleg Deripaska sanctions. And this one over here is, she won't give Medicare for all. She wants to do it incrementally. Meanwhile, like I said, the bigger issue is who can do the work that needs to be done so that America can start functioning as a nation of law and social justice and have a new deal for the American people, a la FDR. And the person who's most like FDR is the person who... Now, FDR wasn't perfect, okay?
That's what I want, but I'm more of an ABT, anybody but Trump.
Well, that's...
So I don't know which to,
Well, see, this is the thing. In the primary, you get to fall in love, and then in the general, you have to fall in line. And the problem is that people, when they get very pissed off, like by games that are played by the party itself, like in West Virginia, and also, Russians engaging in voter suppression and running Hillary saying they're super predators because she voted for a crime bill when we had a lot of crime, then, we're doomed. You can't be the enemy of the better because you're not getting the perfect.
Right. Well, it was Hillary's turn. I mean, that was, I feel like that was how a large part of the country felt.
Right. And if Hillary had been elected president of the United States, then, we would have been investigating her, but not for colluding with Russia.
Yeah. I thought the biggest problem that...
And she would not be attacking democracy itself. She would not be attacking the rule of law itself. Okay? They would be parsing and they would be, trying to get a health care bill because that's something she worked on since 1994. We wouldn't have seen premiums at $2,000 a month with a $6,000 deductible. We wouldn't have seen the risk corridor payments be stopped. We wouldn't be in this position. But would they be investigating her? Hell yes. And would people say, I don't like her. I'm a Democrat, but I don't. Yes, they would. They would be saying that. Just like they said about Barack Obama. I voted for him, but I'm so disappointed. And I started getting those phone calls like 4 months after he was elected. Because that's how Democrats are. They complain, they bitch, they whine, they moan.
Do you think that trying to shame Republicans about health care might work?
No,
because
they have no shame. They have no compassion. They have no empathy. They're dead inside.
But can't you pose it by saying, we're the richest country in the world, aren't we?
That is a known fact. That is a known fact.
Why can't we afford free health care when other countries can?
So
you're saying, are we not the richest country in the world? Come on, you keep saying that, Republicans.
There is no way to shame them into doing anything because they are loyal only to money. They are loyal to dollars. They are loyal to petrodollars and rubles and pounds and shekels. They are not loyal to people. They don't believe we have countries. They don't believe we have democracies. They believe that this is one planet of nothing but corporate interests. That's how they think. It's what they think we are an inconvenient truth. All of us with our climate change being the biggest crisis, all of us who want gun safety and want background checks, all of us who demand that a minimum wage be a living wage and stop relieving corporations of having to drive a consumer economy. Our economy is 70% consumerism. And Walmart is making money off of their poor workers and the people in the neighboring places spending their EBT money, their food stamp money, in the Walmart store. It's such double dipping.
Corporate welfare.
It's socialism in reverse. Oh, you don't want to pay your employees? Don't worry. We'll subsidize them from, ordinary workers. We'll subsidize ordinary workers, relieve you of your obligation to pay a living wage. And then when they get their government money, they'll come and spend it in your store. So it's a win-win for you.
Well,
that's what Republicans care about. You think Republicans care about oversight or the rule of law or not packing the courts or getting the military to kill people in the streets? Oh, my God. Are you kidding me? They don't care.
Yeah, I feel like putting a bumper sticker on my car that says, "Unfortunately, I'm not rich enough to be a Republican. Are you?"
Really? And it's I would put one that says, "I'm not dead inside."
I don't know. A lot of them go to church, but I think a lot of that now is that they're praying that they voted for Trump and they're worried they're going to go to hell.
Maybe. Maybe. And if that's the reason that you're going to church, let me suggest that you don't vote for Trump and go to church and pray for somebody else instead of yourself.
Well, I love your show, Randy. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Jeremy in Chicago.
Yeah, I was kind of calling.
Oh, I know who you are. Yeah.
What do you say?
You're the 18-year-old boy who hasn't had any life experience but lives in your parents' house, right?
I mean, I guess, sure.
Is that you?
I like to listen to your show a lot. I like to listen to both sides. But
so, do you live in the basement or where? Like, do you have your room?
No, I live with my parents.
Yeah, but where are you doing all this listening? Are you in your room?
Well, no, I finished school, so I finished my school, and I typically listen after school. So.
No, but where are you doing all this listening? Like in your
Well, yeah. So I have a phone. I listen on my phone, and then yeah.
You live on your phone?
I listen on my phone.
You listen on your phone, but where are you physically? I want to.
I'm at my school right now.
Oh, you're at school.
Yeah.
Why are you at school at almost 6 o'clock?
I have a club, and I listen to your show while I'm at.
Is it? It must be a gripping club.
Sure.
What kind of club is it?
Robotics.
Robotics. Oh, so basically you're a smart kid, but you have no life experience yet. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
Got it.
Well, I was just calling because of you talked about the minimum wage and how a lot of people need more minimum wage, but I mean I don't see why. I looked at the statistics about it, right? So I saw that said most people that are working for minimum wage or under it are either teenagers or are retired, so they don't need to be supporting a large family or something like that. So when you said that, I kind of called that into question. I looked up the statistics for 2016 and 2017, and both of those were the case. So I don't typically.
So
see
you think
why,
Walmart, with all its stores, are only hiring teenagers and retired people?
I didn't say necessarily Walmart.
Well,
and
this
not
is
only
the example.
But the majority of people that are working for minimum wage are that's the demographic. That's the statistic. So
that's not
whatever.
That's
Walmart
just,
might be. What do you say?
That's just not true. You have.
That is true.
I'm telling you, it's not true.
Maybe not Walmart, but minimum wage workers in general.
Who do you
in
think
America.
is the largest employer in America?
Okay, then the statistic would be applying.
If you have a company that the board of directors are literally making $1.5 million an hour, and they're doing it by offloading their responsibility to pay a living wage to their workers as the largest employer in the United States, and they're double dipping, meaning we're paying what they won't pay to support and to supplement their workers. So we pay their workers in everything from, food stamps to Medicaid to Section 8 housing vouchers so that they can live. So they've offloaded their responsibility to us, the taxpayers. And then on the other side of it, the people who have this government money, because we're supplementing what Walmart should be paying them, are spending that money in the Walmart. Do you think that's a good plan for this country?
No, I mean, I generally support reform and stuff like that, but when it comes to the demographics of people that earn minimum wage, and this is the one statistic I looked up, and it's from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, so it might not be Walmart only, but it's other companies as well.
Walmart is the largest employer in the United States of America.
Okay, I mean, then the statistics, I guess, then that would be that
do you think,
on average,
do you think people who work, do you think that people who work in slaughterhouses are paid fair wages? Do you think that they're even paid at the end of the week? Do you think that?
Yeah, because you don't just the people that own the slaughterhouse are probably doing in terms of like they carry like the risk of them going bankrupt, right? So they
don't carry the risk of them going bankrupt. They hire undocumented people so that they don't have to pay them a decent wage. That's who works in your slaughterhouses. Now, Jeremy, on your way home from school, go to a restaurant and go look in the kitchen and go see who's preparing your food and go see who's serving your food, and then understand that those people are making $2 an hour.
So that's a completely different situation. But, I mean, I do see what you're saying. I definitely do see what you're saying.
So things have got to change. You can't say that a corporation in America ought to be allowed to offload all their responsibility to pay a living wage as the largest employer in the United States to us. It's just wrong. We can't continue down that road.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of it, you have these people that are making this kind of cash, like $1.5 million an hour, because they were able to offload their responsibility. They're the ones that are picking our legislators. They're the ones that are picking our president with their huge donations so that things will not change, so that the status quo is maintained. That's not progressive. That's not growth. And that's why we don't have a decent economy. Our economy is driven by consumerism. 70% of all gross domestic product, everything that we make in America is consumer driven, meaning that we have enough money in our pockets to go buy stuff. And if people don't have disposable income, meaning that they have a little more than just the bare, necessities, then we don't grow. So giving more money to the lower middle class, to the middle class, rewarding productivity with wage increases, raising the minimum wage, that causes growth. Growth comes from the bottom up, not from the top down. The top tend to hoard their wealth. And when they do, they know what they have to do. The one thing they have to do is pay for the legislators that will keep the status quo. Then you have all of us here in the middle and the bottom, and we got a million ideas about how to do it. But they only have one. And that's why they win. Buy a stinking podcast.